can I speak of her virtues? I don't know where to begin.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 times classic musicals tackled serious issues.
It's a free country and I ain't got the right. But I got a badge. What do you got?
For this list, we'll be looking at the most notable musicals from the early to mid 20th century that prove that it's not all kick lines and jazz hands by addressing real social topics. Which classic musical do you think dealt with a serious issue particularly well? Let us know in the comments. Number 10. Fiddler on the Roof. Meet Tevye, a Jewish milkman living in poverty in the village of Anatevka in the early 20th century.
And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
When his daughters buck convention and choose their own husbands, he's compelled to re-examine his traditions, culture, and customs. In addition, the Tsar is plotting a pogrom, forcing much of the community to flee.
Suppose we refuse to go?
You will be forced out.
We will defend ourselves.
We'll stay in our homes.
Refuse to
We will keep our land. Fight against our militia, our army. I wouldn't advise that.
The show tackles themes like discrimination and oppression, and highlights the community's determination to survive and thrive in the face of such horrors. While the story centers on the Jewish faith, many of its themes are universal, making audiences hope for a better tomorrow. It became the first Broadway show to play more than 3,000 performances and remains as popular as ever.
Us and our good fortune. Be happy, be healthy, long life.
Number 9. Cabaret. This 1966 musical takes place during the rise of the Nazi regime in Germany. It centers on the Kit Kat Club, where life is a cabaret.
Leave your troubles outside. So, life is disappointing. Forget it. In here, life is beautiful.
The show explores themes like intimacy, sexuality, and abortion. It also teaches audiences the dangers of indifference to political or social injustice. Indeed, the MC, Sally Bowles, and countless others ignore the impending shift in Germany's political landscape. Instead, they either crack jokes or shrug in apathy. Similarly, in the stage version of The Sound of Music, Max and the Baroness advocate complicity in the number No Way to Stop It. Both examples warn audiences that ignoring discrimination and wide-scale systemic violence, even when you're not the target, comes at a huge price.
I will not bow my head to the men I despise. You don't have to bow your head, just stoop a little.
Number 8. Fiorello. This might be one of Broadway's more underappreciated shows, yet its themes ring as true today as when it premiered in 1959.
Proudly we picket the punks who pick the pockets of the poor, hard-working poor.
We follow Fiorello LaGuardia's career, including his quest to become New York's mayor, the highs and lows of civil service, and his opposition to the Democrat-led Tammany Hall.
Tammany, what's that? Tammany. Wrong, the answer's tyranny.
Largely taking place in and around the Great Depression, the story sees the politician contend with inequality, a city in the throes of change, and substantial partisanism. The show delves into unions, women's rights, and depicts how Fiorello appealed to New York's immigrant communities. It was the recipient of multiple awards, and notably joined a rare circle of musicals that have secured the Pulitzer Prize for drama.
I say, when you got a pair of jacks, bet 'em.
Number 7. Finians Rainbow. Premiering in 1947, Finians Rainbow was reportedly one of the earliest Broadway shows to feature an interracial cast. Finian McLonergan and his daughter Sharon have traveled from Ireland to the fictional Rainbow Valley with a stolen pot of gold, from which they plan to plant and accumulate more money.
Oh, ever since I was 2 years high, you've been seeing leprechauns in the cabbage patch and rainbows over your whiskey jug. Now, what pixie-fied fancy of yours has really brought us to America? Huh?
You'll love it here. You'll have everything you left behind in Guacamora.
They are pursued by its rightful owner, a leprechaun who's slowly becoming human without it. Although it masquerades as a musical comedy, it offers sincere commentary on corruption, bigotry, capitalism, and the pursuit of the American dream.
When a rich man doesn't want to work, he's a bon vivant. Yes, he's a bon vivant. But when a poor man doesn't want to work, he's a loafer, he's a lounger, he's a lazy good-for-nothing.
Many of these motifs are personified through the villainous Senator Rockin', who puts money over morals and opposes integration. Some have even suggested that the story endorses socialism. Needless to say, this musical was very ahead of its time.
Won't it be rich when everyone's poor relative becomes a Rockefeller-tive and palms no longer itch? What a switch!
Number 6. Anyone Can Whistle. This Sondheim musical from 1964 was reportedly dubbed a satire on conformity and the insanity of the so-called sane. Indeed, the cult classic takes a light-hearted approach to mental health. Yet it also questions what normalcy is and how that definition is set.
Maybe you could show me how to let go. Lower my guard. Learn to be free.
Residents of a local mental health hospital are integrated back into society, but quickly become indistinguishable from the other townspeople. If anything, they seem better off since they haven't been forced to conform to the town's norms and values.
Gimme a boat and hurry on down. Show me how much you think of me.
The story also opens discussions about politics, government, and other influential organizations. But overall, it's a reflection on life and how quickly society applies labels to those it deems as non-conformists. Number 5. Porgy and Bess. We can't talk about this 1935 Gershwin's classic without acknowledging its complicated history.
It ain't necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. The things that you're liable to read in the Bible, it ain't necessarily so.
On the one hand, it was rare for Black Americans to be able to share their stories on stage. On the other, it was crafted by white people. And their depictions weren't always the most respectful or accurate, but it was reportedly Gershwin who advocated for featuring Black actors. Set in Charleston, South Carolina, it tells the story of an impoverished man with a disability, Porgy. He connects with Bess, a woman contending with a coercively controlling partner and substance use disorder. There's a lot to unpack, and it's by no means perfect, but it continues to challenge attitudes and spark conversations about race.
That's where we belong.
Number 4. West Side Story.
Here you are free and you have pride.
Long as you stay on your own side.
Did you know that Jerome Robbins initially planned to write a musical centering on conflicts between the Lower East Side's Jewish and Catholic communities in Manhattan? However, in the intervening years, as the project seemingly went nowhere, there were new social issues dominating headlines: street gangs. So he and his collaborators relocated this Romeo and Juliet reimagining to the Upper West Side, and the Jewish and Catholic communities became Puerto Rican and white ones.
Get your hands off, American!
Nardo.
Stay away from my sister. Sister? Couldn't you see he's one of them?
No, I saw only him.
There's only one thing they want from a Puerto Rican.
That's a lie.
Later, Tony.
The 1957 show's approach to gang rivalries, as well as immigration, racism, and police mismanagement, were game-changing, to say the least. There's also, of course, a message of tolerance and critique of violence. After all, we know the heavy price both sides pay when they fail to embrace their differences.
You all killed him, and my brother, and Riff. Not with bullets and guns, with hate. Well, I can kill too, because now I have hate.
Number 3. South Pacific. Rodgers and Hammerstein's 1949 comedy musical offers a powerful message about racism that was well ahead of its time.
You got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how you gonna have a dream come true?
It delves into the subject on personal and institutional levels, set against the backdrop of World War II. Indeed, its two main love stories center around couples who must overcome racial prejudices, including their own. The song You've Got to Be Carefully Taught in particular was unfortunately considered controversial for the way it unpacks bigotry and its support of interracial relationships. Still, the creator stuck by it.
To hate all the people your relatives hate, you've got to be carefully taught.
The show also examines the changing roles of women during this period. In other words, it covers a lot of important ground. And while times may have changed, these messages still need to be heard.
We're the same kind of people, fundamentally.
Number 2, hair. In the mid to late 1960s, hair transformed the face of musical theater. And not just because it reportedly became the first Broadway production to feature full-on nudity. We meet a group of pacifists who have grown out their hair and are protesting the draft during the Vietnam War.
Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding, no more falsehoods or derision.
Their story addressed a plethora of serious subjects, such as sexual freedom, sexuality, interracial relationships, and recreational substance use. The show even broke the fourth wall to literally bring its messages to audiences. Some parts, namely the aforementioned nudity, proved to be too progressive for some, and walkouts weren't uncommon. In the end, though, hair knocked down barriers that allowed subsequent musicals to boldly discuss subjects they likely never would have dared broach in the past.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1, Showboat.
The history of the American musical theater is divided quite simply into two eras, everything before Showboat and everything after Showboat.
1927's Showboat reportedly made musical theater history by featuring the first integrated cast. This show was among the earliest to take real-world issues like racism and racial identity and narrate them through song. It also broke ground by depicting an interracial relationship and addressed what it meant to be white passing during the segregated Jim Crow era.
You two better get your things and come along with me.
The piece was reportedly intended as a commentary on racism and inequality, though that isn't to say it isn't without its issues. And indeed, it has required numerous revisions over the years. Still, this was a new and more mature approach to entertainment that sought to challenge its audiences. Thus, Showboat reshaped and redefined musical theater for good.
Agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.